Welcome to Spoilers Intended, a podcast about series, novels, and films. For this episode, Amazon took a story, quite dilatory, and set to quarry. In a fit of vainglory, they made it gory, with sex mandatory, just to steal Throne's repertory. That's right, we're talking Wheel of Time. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. I'm Stephen Ford, joined as always by Andrew Knuckles.
Hey, how's it going?
And Joel Killingsworth.
Hello.
Hello, indeed. So, guys, to kick us off, before we dig into the meat and or potatoes, as you choose to view it, of Wheel of Time, we are going to do a little talk suggested by one of our listeners, Matthew Carey, on our Discord. That's right. If you would like to hear us possibly talk about something that you would like to hear us talk about,
or explanations of why we gave scores certain things beyond what's in the actual podcast.
Oh, I don't know if you need to encourage that one, but
discussion happens.
The discussion does happen. You can go to our Discord. Links are in the description. So, on to the actual topic. Matthew wanted us to discuss, based off of Andrew's love of Contact, First Contact media. So, for us, what movie about First Contact? We're talking alien
media.
Life. Yeah. Or sorry, I said movie. Media. Yeah. About alien life. So we're talking books, films, TV, whatever we wanted to choose. Hence Andrew's specification of media.
Mm-hmm.
And what is our favorite? So I'm gonna let Andrew kick it off.
Oh no, don't make me start. I have probably the most serious one out of here. So you guys get to have all.
See,
the
that was the hard part. Was I don't. Okay, you know what? We'll start with sort of serious, and then we'll just descend from there. So I'm gonna start.
You're gonna start.
I'm gonna start.
Okay.
It took itself seriously, at least. So for me, the epitome of what First Contact will look like is Independence Day.
I knew it was coming.
I mean, yeah, you should have. But they're not friendly, right? There are a lot of First Contacts that are either will they be friendly, won't they be friendly? And there's a little bit in this of
or they're benevolent, or
yeah, or they're just it's a bacteria or something.
Yeah,
there's a lot of that, and it could be a very deadly bacteria. There's a lot of that as well.
Mm-hmm. Which that's actually a real concern. Like if you have beings from another planet come to your, anyways,
an actual problem that can happen, right? But I mean, Independence Day, it takes a fairly serious subject matter, the extermination of the human race for its resources, and brings a certain levity to it and a very high level of entertainment. This is peak Will Smith.
Yeah, Will Smith, Jeff Goldblum, like. Yeah.
Yeah,
who played the president?
Bill Pullman.
Pullman.
God, he was fantastic as president.
I mean, he's he's discount not Harrison Ford. He's discount something or other. I can't remember it now. Or maybe somebody else's discount rude. Bill Pullman. But he's good. He's really good.
He's great.
And he's great as the president. He gets
his speech at the end. Yeah.
Of Randy Quaid playing Randy Quaid.
Yep.
They didn't give him lines. That's just he actually thought he was killing aliens. It's true. He's nuts. Anyways,
did you ever see him in the? I don't remember Leprechauns. I think it aired on Sci-Fi, maybe.
Oh, I know what you're talking about, but no,
that is a movie that I was traumatized as a kid. when I was at like some friend's house and then they had it on and I could not sleep for a week.
Wow.
And I know it's a terrible film.
It is, absolutely.
But
I'm thinking Trolls. Never mind, not Leprechaun.
Yeah,
I don't know what that one is, but I'm thinking Trolls.
Leprechaun, or maybe Leprechaun 2. Had a very young Jennifer Aniston in it, and she's always been really upset because once she became a big star, a big name, when they make a production run, and now they put starring Jennifer Aniston, like she's on the cover of it now, and there's nothing you can do about it. She's in the movie. Yeah. It's one of those, I think.
Yeah, but Leprechaun is the only film that I've ever seen that Randy Quaid led in.
Yeah. Oh, okay, fair enough.
Okay, anyways, so back to Independence Day.
Back to the plot. It's a summer blockbuster. Feel good, has its high moments. Bill Pullman is president. He gets his big speech. It hits all the marks you want out of a movie, while kind of handling what could be a really serious subject of how do we actually respond to this? And for most of the movie, the response is pretty poor.
Most of the response is luck.
No, most of the response is death.
Yeah,
I mean, honestly, but yeah, and it's just really well done overall. Is They made good use of their budget. They have really good effects that still hold up pretty well for what was going on screen at the time.
Yeah.
And it is I don't think that it was a trope utilizer so much as a kind of a trope genre definer in a lot of ways.
It definitely molded a lot of video games and stuff like that kind of happened. Especially there's a whole level in Star Fox 64.
I knew it.
Where you have to go and destroy just one of the UFO saucers.
Well, that slow hover over the target.
Yep.
Then it becomes vulnerable right before the shot. Like that, you see that in a lot of games now. So, anyways, I'm going to push it off now over to Joel for a very serious response to counteract mine.
Extremely serious. So we're going straight into Star Trek parodies. And
Spaceballs?
We're talking about
that is Star Wars.
It's also not First Contact related, but anyways.
So we're going to talk about Galaxy Quest.
Yes.
So Galaxy Quest stars Sigourney Weaver and Tim
Allen. Alan Rickman.
And
it also has Dwight Schrute's actor.
Yeah,
in it
from
as well.
from the American run of The Office. Yeah.
Yep.
He plays one of the aliens. So anyway, there's these washed up actors that essentially in their heyday played on Star Trek. It's called Galaxy Quest in the show, and the aliens, these aliens have been watching the show, and they think that they are it's a documentary as opposed to being fiction. And so when they are in trouble, they come to Earth and collect these actors, thinking that they are collecting the crew of this intrepid starship. And they have, in order to get them to help them, they have recreated the starship from the show because they are technologically advanced. They're just not capable of fighting.
Yeah.
Right. And so they need these heroes to come, and they give them all of this equipment. And so now they have to do the things that they were pretending to do in the show. And it's an absolute riot.
Yeah. It's really a great movie.
I can say I think I've only seen it maybe once or twice in my youth, and I mean, because I'd never seen Star Trek growing up. I just never kind of grew up with it.
Yeah,
I still found it really entertaining, just because Sigourney Weaver's always fun, and Tim Allen was popular at the time.
I mean, this was peak Tim Allen.
Yeah,
this is height of his
and Alan Rickman's in it. I mean, you can't.
Yeah, and if you don't like and Tony Belushi as well. And if you don't really like Star Trek or whatever, it doesn't pull on direct references so much as like
just
trope references.
Yeah, you don't have to know the specific episode this was brought from.
So it's pretty universally accessible.
Yeah. Well, Andrew just proved that he didn't watch any Star Trek. He still liked it.
Oh yeah, no, it's still fun. Yeah, I mean, it's not a movie that I like go and seek out, but it's whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. It's well done. Yeah. So on to a lighter note, Andrew.
So I'm the only one that did not go with a movie or a TV show. I chose a book, and I've actually mentioned this book on the podcast. I think when we were doing, we're pitching stuff, and I chose Contact, and that is not this one. But that
did lead to this topic.
Yes, this is Rendezvous with Rama by Arthur C. Clarke. It's a book. And it will hopefully eventually be a movie.
With Denis Villeneuve. Right?
Yep, as director. And this is kind of a story about, it's sometime in the future, I think like 2070-ish, I think is around the time period of when it's happening.
Not far future.
Not super far future. Like there are still, it's very much, space travel is very localized to like only around Mars. As about as far as stuff kind of goes out, and this object enters the solar system at a very, very high speed. But basically, the orbit that it's coming through, it is going to pass by this crew that is just kind of out like doing patrols or whatever around that section of the solar system. And as it gets closer, they kind of notice that it is basically not like. It's not an organic form, like it's not a rock. It's a cylinder, like a really big cylinder. And so it's kind of coming through, and they only have this like a very short period of time before like it gets too close to the sun, and they'd have to abandon it because it would get too hot, and then they'd be on the other side of the solar system basically and never be able to get back to Earth. And so the whole book is them basically intercepting this cylinder, and then they kind of like dock with it, and then they kind of see, hey, there's like a door to this thing. and they open it up, and it's this massive environment is the best way to describe it, where you could see from one end of the cylinder all the way to the other end, and it's like 15 to 20 kilometers long, and it has its own weather system, environment, all this other kind of stuff. And when they're exploring it, it's just them. There's no indication of life on this cylinder. And, kind of they're going through it, and as they're getting closer to the sun, because it is warming up, all of these systems and stuff are kind of turning on, and
it's all coming to life.
Yeah, everything's kind of like coming to life, and they're exploring and kind of like noticing things about this as all this is kind of happening. And it's a relatively short book. It's probably only maybe 400 pages long, and I'm not going to reveal obviously all the stuff that kind of happens in the book, but it is a fantastic kind of exploration of what it would probably be like to experience basically a generational ship, is kind of what this is, and the kind of mysteries that kind of go about it, because there's no one on it. So you're like, well, what happened? So clearly the generational ship didn't work, or maybe it did, you don't know. And it's very based in realistic sci-fi, Arthur C. Clarke, so it's hard sci-fi, as about as close as you can get. And just some of the concepts and everything like that you get out of it is just really fun. And it's not a quotation marks fun book. There's no action in it. There's no comedy really.
It's just science.
Yeah, it's really just a science team that's just happened to be in the area that's exploring this thing with just the tools that they have available on their ship.
Yeah, just kind of bare bones, the core of the concept of science fiction. Here is a thing. Let's talk about said thing.
Yeah. And it's just a great book. It's one of my it is my favorite book of all time. Like I've read it probably 10, 15 times now. I have like 4 different copies around the house. It just kind of exists. So, yeah.
I'd be very intrigued to see it adapted to the big screen.
Yeah, and I think it actually would translate pretty well into a movie.
It's going to have a very high, like a high tension, because you just don't know what's around the next corner.
A lot of Shepherd tones.
Oh, yes.
But yeah, so that's mine.
Fair enough. Well, I think we covered that pretty well. And so we're going to plow forward into the Wheel of Time. So Joel, you want to give us a little synopsis on, this is season 1 of Wheel of Time on Amazon. You want to give us a little synopsis of what season 1 encompasses?
So season 1 does a lot of setup of the world, right? Because this is secondary world fantasy, and the idea in this world is that magic exists, and only women can use the magic safely. If men use the magic, then they go mad, because that part of the magic is broken. And so there is a prophecy of the most powerful magic user ever is going to be reborn, because they kind of have a reincarnation cycle kind of deal to the world.
The whole point of the Wheel of Time is that it's a very Buddhist rebirth,
and it's a wheel.
Yeah,
so
it rotates.
It just kind of
goes around. Yeah, goes around. What goes around comes around, and it keeps going around.
Yep.
Weaving as it wills.
Yep.
And and so this this magic user that is going to be reborn is either prophesied to destroy the world or to save it from the bad guy, the forces of darkness, right? And so it's all about trying to find this person and control them, because you need to control that outcome.
Right. Yeah. Because there are possible there's a lot of power at stake here, and a lot of bad things could happen.
Like the people that have power, political power, magical power, they're the large actors at work, and then it's also the story of the small actors that get caught up in their machinations,
in the grinding of these large political wheels.
Yep.
You will.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. So I guess on that note, let's hear a composite score. So this is our rating of this season 1 show, and we'll go into the breakdown once we get into spoiler land, exactly how we generate this. But for easy listening reference, there are 4 primary elements that we are looking at, and that is
pillars of reviewing knowledge.
There we go. The spectacle of the show, the performance of the cast, and the score, so the music, and then finally the plot. So those are the 4 things that we are weighting and considering in this score. So Joel, what is our composite out of 10?
Out of 10, right. So I'm going to preface this with the fact
caveats
that I have been looking forward to this immensely.
Same. It came out on my birthday. I was very excited.
Wheel of Time, the book series, was pivotally important to my developing understanding of literature.
Yeah, for everyone who's listening who may not be familiar with the book series, this is 15 books, 14 books that are in the actual main and a prequel, released over the course of 25 years-ish, thereabouts. Yeah. I mean, up to the point where the author died while writing it, and it was finished by another author, basically.
And I had never heard of Wheel of Time until I met Steven.
So
I'm a big fan of it, by the way.
Steven and I, at least, huge fans.
I mean,
so
well, go ahead.
And so when I say that we gave this show a 5.8 out of 10, you understand how angry I am.
And I wouldn't even say that the score is directly related to all the things that they actually changed. I just don't think it was a very good show.
It was not well done. And as we're going to get into, there are some
redeeming
factors in there. And in addition to that, there are some, like, shooting happened during COVID, and there had to be reshoots during COVID. There was pressures on the production timeline. So they
lost cast during it too.
And we know that they are slated to do a season 2 that has been confirmed. Amazon is footing the bill for season 2.
They're already in shooting.
So the fact that they won't have those external pressures for season 2 makes me hopeful that we can maybe bump this up a little bit in the future.
It would be nice.
Yeah.
I would like to be able to say that.
It's much easier to elevate it from what it is now than being a perfect season and then going to the next one. You're just like, oh, I don't know about that.
And it's hard to look at a whole season and talk about everything in terms of specifics. But without going into spoilers, what would you pick out as the key problems?
Pacing would be for me. I had a lot of problems with the middle section of the show and the first episode. The first episode was very slow, but I understand you got a world build and that kind of stuff.
Set stuff up, yeah.
But the middle section of the show felt like it was just kind of treading water because they may have shot those and storyboarded a lot of those out and written them with the idea that they were going to hopefully get more episodes.
Right.
And then the production company was like, actually, you're not going to get that many episodes. And you're like, oh, that's a problem. And that was kind of my big thing.
Yeah, for me, it fell in this weird gray land of, this is very obviously not a very faithful adaptation. It is also struggling to be good in its own right. There are changes that have to happen when you go from writing to film or from film to writing. There are just some things you cannot do in that media that has to change.
Yeah, it doesn't translate.
It just won't work. Or some things work better. And you have to lean into those things. But it also fouls itself on its own internal logic. Like, you can change stuff and that's fine, but you have to be faithful to what you're changing and stick with that logic and not fall back on, say, a existing storyline that relied upon logic you ignored or those kind of potentials. So there's a lot of concern in that, not just, hopefully, again, a 5.8, that has a lot of room to grow. Yes, that still has a lot of floor beneath it to fall.
It is technically higher than 50%, so there is 50% more that it could fall before having absolutely no choice but to go up.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's in a middle zone, which is not particularly great. And I don't know. The pacing, like I can agree with Andrew on the pacing. It's weird, and it just didn't. This is a thing I read, right? I read as a young adult, basically a child, really, going into being a young adult.
Yeah.
And
it's a formative book series.
Right. And in many of the same ways that Lord of the Rings was, right? And when Lord of the Rings hit, Lord of the Rings was wondrous, right? Seeing these places realized in film was incredible, seeing the vision of it. I never got that in this show where I saw something and it was just,
you're like, ooh, yeah, there it is.
And it wasn't even like, oh, this perfectly is what I imagined. It's just, oh, that is stunning. Like, because when you see Gondor in Lord of the Rings, it's not maybe perfectly what I got out of the description, right? but it's still, oh wow, that is a thing.
Mhm.
And that is definitely Gondor.
Yeah, that is like there is no passing this off as New York City. It is Gondor. So, anyways, Joel, how about you? You mentioned you were angry. So.
Yes. So a lot of it has to do with the liberties that they have taken with changing underlying world building elements,
Like
right?
the core values.
Well, it's not
It's
even
not
it's not the
values.
core values. It's the fact that if you change a character, okay, so when you're translating from book to show, it's not quite as jarring as when you have to change from a book to a film, because in a film everything has to be very, very condensed. In a show, you still have to condense, not quite as much,
But you have more time.
but you still see things like combining characters, eliminating subplots,
Right.
doing these kinds of things to just trim and still get the core of what made the book great, right?
And they make sense. It makes sense to do these
Yeah.
types of things.
But when you start saying no, we're going to go deeper than that. We're going to change core world building elements and rules to how the magic works, how the different political bodies relate to one another. Then the individual plots for all the characters have to be tweaked to match the new norm.
Mhm.
Otherwise, they stop making sense.
Right.
And there's already a significant amount of that in the first season. And the problem with making that kind of change, if you don't course correct adeptly, is the longer you go, the worse it gets.
Well, it's a Exxon Valdez or Titanic issue, right? It's so long. There's so much in front of you, right? 14 books
Mhm.
that changing some stuff on page 60 of book 1 maybe it's not a big change in that
So it's
moment.
ripple
It
effects.
has a
that-
lot
yeah.
of time
Yeah.
to propagate out there and you hit book 10 and hey, this character shouldn't be here or this shouldn't work this way. There's a lot of concerns there with how are they going to support that over long-term writing.
Right. And so that's probably my biggest frustration, is that they introduced things that seem unnecessary on the
Mhm.
forefront and introduce nothing but problems.
Okay.
All right. Well, that feels like a pretty good little breakdown there.
So we're going to move on to the intermission, but as we head into this intermission, this is your opportunity to avoid the madness of spoilers. Before you go, if you liked what you heard, you can support us at patreon.com/spoilersintendedpodcast. If you're ready to stick around, though, for the spoilers, then hang on, because the wheel weaves as the wheel wills.
Alrighty. Well, on that note, we are now beyond the intermission. We are firmly into spoiler territory.
Are we in the blight?
This could very well be the blight or
Are the
IL
trees
waste.
trying
The
to
spoiler
grab you and pull
build
you into the moss?
blight.
Oh
of
man, you just
rotten
reminded me of a whole
fruit.
other issue that happened in episode 8. Anyways,
Episode 8
Before
had
we-
a lot of problems.
before we get to the plot, because there are issues.
Right.
Let's
Basically,
kick it off.
you almost have to split it up into two sections, right? You have episodes 1 through 6.
and then you have
And,
7 and 8.
seven.
and then you have 7 and 8, which is where all of the production problems came into play.
Right.
Not being able to shoot through COVID, having to do reshoots in separate locations, having to scrunch down because the showrunner didn't get the 2 extra episodes that he wanted.
And having lost Matt's original actor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They say he was fired, but I think that because of the COVID delays and that kind of I think there's a lot of other issues with their.
There's
It's
been-
unclear.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
been speculation, but nothing's been confirmed by anyone who's in a position to know.
Yeah.
So there's no way for us to know, basically.
Correct.
Yeah. So anyways, we're going to move into the first piece of our metric, which is spectacle.
Mhm.
So for everyone at home, spectacle is the effects, the overall scope, the scale, the feel, the emotion of the story. How does it hit? And how do they make it hit, right?
And like a lot of the visuals too, because that
Yeah,
plays
it's
into
all,
it.
yeah, effects, visuals, especially here, right? Because they're very reliant on visuals.
Mhm.
So I'm going to kick it over to eeny, meeny, miny, mo. I pick a Joel.
So I gave it a 5 on Spectacle.
starting on a high note.
5 out of 10. This is unfortunately a high note. And
That's not how
it only
if we-
goes down
we-
from here.
No, that's not true. We hit a 5.8. This is below this is below the score.
It's all Joel's fault.
Totally Joel's fault.
If I wasn't in here, it would have been lower.
It would
Anyway,
have been lower.
so I gave it a 5 on Spectacle.
And he's the angry one.
There were a lot of problems. So the the two biggest glaring problems to me in the visuals and trying to create a visual environment that pulls you in was, first off, the costuming. The costume design was actually pretty good.
It was very good.
It definitely didn't feel like medieval Europe. It didn't feel like modern day Western culture. It was a different, unique kind of clothing.
It definitely looked like something you wouldn't see here, like in
and it was consistent, right?
Yeah.
Like they made it feel like a world where people dress this certain way. That's great. And then they had, from different nationalities, they had some variations on the themes and stuff like that. So that was great. But all of the clothing looked brand new and clean and with vibrant colors like it had never been worn before. And it was so jarring. It felt like a production with a budget a tenth of what this production budget was.
Felt like a Ren Fair.
It felt, Rand felt, instead of like a sheep herder, he felt like he just came out of a department store on Times Square in New York, because he has like the new hot.
No, he's in a Macy's ad.
Hot
He's
thing,
he's the model. I mean, he's got the size and the smolder.
He has the urban shepherd look that has has the sewn together sheepskin.
Yeah.
That has no wear at all.
Oh yeah, no, his big jacket cloak thing, that is like $800 from a designer line, and it's never been scuffed. You know, it's one of those items where you just kind of look at it and you're like, yeah, okay. He did not feel like he herded sheep all day. He looked like he was at a Ren Fair.
Yeah.
And then to go further, like the set design, I'm talking like the large scale set design where you're looking at the different cities that they go to, and you're looking at the layout of Emond's Field, you're looking at the layout of Tar Valon, you're looking at Faldara, the fortress city. All of those designs were really cool and very well realized, especially Emond's Field, where they essentially just built an entire village just to burn it down. Right? Like that's where a lot of money went in the early season.
Yeah.
Well, so I would argue though that the set design for the fortress city just felt like it was Castle Grayskull from He-Man, because it was just like this castle in the middle with like nothing.
So there is a part where I actually kind of chuckled to myself where they do the first big establishing shot of Faldara.
Yeah.
And on its left screen right side, it has one of these points that you see in old Italian star fortresses.
Yeah.
So they're made to, they're the early reaction of where we still build castles, but now there's gunpowder and we have to stop cannonballs.
Yeah.
And it had one of those points, and no other part of it had another one of those points. So it was like, if this exists for a specific defensive measure, the other 4 points of the castle are undefended. And if it doesn't exist for a defensive measure, why is it way out here? It was so jarring in terms of, because they did a good job of blending styles of clothing to where you could kind of see how, based on the lore from the breaking, how cultures have been intersected and mixed over time, and these pieces have traveled through. And then I hit something like that, and like, but who? Why? Why is that here?
This is the problem that you have whenever you are a relatively decent intermediate to advanced expert for historical fortresses and war.
Oh man, like
I'm not anything remotely like that.
Anytime that you are an expert on any sort of subject matter, you cannot watch or consume media touching on that topic ever again, because people just get details wrong if they're not an expert at the level that you are. Yeah, because you're just
like, that's not how it works.
Right? So as a profession, I'm an electrical engineer and I work for a power company. So anytime that there's like terrorist hijacking the electric grid or whatever in a show, I just have to be like, okay, I'm going to come back when this part of the movie is over.
Well, so what's funny though is they have a moment when Matt and Rand are with Tom and they're going to that farm.
Yeah.
And the farmer, draws his bow on them. And I was watching it. I was like, what in the world is this dude doing with the bow? And I don't know much about bow and arrow. Like, just straight up, I am not.
Was this the guy that had it like just in his fist?
And then they called it, like, Rand called him out on it. And I was like, yeah, that's right. You call him out on that. And then like later on, they show Rand practicing the bow. And it's like, oh, what is he doing? Yeah.
But in addition to that, like they had difficulty blocking out their action sequences to where you understood, like particularly the most egregious problem is in the battle in episode 3.
No, so
where they're
Well,
fighting in the woods to
yeah.
defend the cave, where
They're
Logain is being held
Mhm.
and his followers are coming to get. You have no idea where they are during the battle, how close to the cave they are, what sort of tactical decisions anyone is making. It's just a bunch of shaky cam following people running through the woods.
So
I guarantee you what. Sorry, Stephen.
No, you're good.
I guarantee you what happened was they were shooting the camp section, and then they had like the set where they had Logain and everything, and then they're like one of their stage or one of their production guys were like, "Hey, there's a really cool forest over here. We need to go over there and shoot this battle
hill
scene."
is perfect. Yeah. Well, so I'll actually give that scene a pass because it is a sudden surprise attack. There is a lot of chaos and confusion. Like the Aes Sedai, for as powerful as they are, they don't necessarily mount a cohesive defense. They don't have the opportunity to do so. It's not expected. They I guess assume they have more warning from Corinne's wards.
Yeah.
It's a little insulting because there's a whole lot of warders who are kind of like the pinnacle of warfare for them to not have a proper,
defensive screen.
Yeah, something set up because they know this could happen. But I'll give that a pass. Like shaky camera is acceptable when you have a character because you're mostly seeing as kind of from Nynaeve's Nynaeve. How do you say her name? Perspective.
They literally said her name
I don't care.
every episode for the entire show.
I don't care.
That you just watched.
Every single episode. Nynaeve, what are you doing? Nynaeve, you need to stop talking.
Anyways,
all of that, and we still only got one braid tug.
I know. I'm so disappointed in them, actually. Anyways, but it's mostly from her perspective, and she hasn't really. I mean, she's had the horror that was Amon's Field, but she hasn't really experienced Emmons Field. Whatever.
Oh my gosh! They say these names in the show.
I'm not going to respect them for it either.
Okay.
Anyway, she's had that horror, but she hasn't really experienced battle, so you're kind of getting it from her perspective. So it is kind of the horror and the chaos of it. So I can kind of let that slide a little bit. I do think at the final battle of the season, they also deserve to be dinged because one, the setup, the whole scene, everything about that setup looks dumb. Everything about it looks dumb. And then the way that it is actually done and shot as they're being like charged by the Trollocs and stuff is just, what are y'all doing? What are y'all doing? They had the whole World War Z moment. Like they wanted to do Helm's Deep and then they had to do World War Z to get up the wall. And then like they had, we're back to the fortification thing. Agamar shooting out of an arrow slit that narrows like arrow slits are supposed to do. And then it widens out into a window. When you look at the wall, it's a whole freaking square. It's a huge one. Like the Trolloc can almost fit into it. Like, who designed this and why?
For clarification, the reason why on the inside it fans out is so the archer can
get multiple angles.
Different angles. You don't do that on the outside because then things that are coming in will
just
funnel
get funneled
into the window.
It funnels it to the center where presumably you are. Yeah. And Lauren too, because she was, she lived in Germany. She'd been in castles. She's like, why are the windows like that? Yeah. I don't have an answer.
Okay, so I'm just gonna interject here.
Go for it.
I'm gonna go with my score because we have to. Okay, I gave it a 5. Joel gave it a 5.
Yeah.
So we're 50% right now.
Okay.
And we have to say things that are actually like that did work. Like we can't just knock at the entire, hour.
Oh, but you're just making
podcast.
me think of something else that didn't work.
Well, that's fine. So most of my critiques have already kind of been said. But I'm gonna leave the clothing stuff for you, Stephen, because you brought
to say something nice.
No. Okay. So the thing that I did like about the show, the big sweeping shots of them whenever they're first traveling from Emmons Field into trying to get to like Tarvalon or Tarvalin or Shadar Logoth or whatever. Yeah. Ignore changes.
Yeah, and back to like the city design stuff. Like every location had a very different look.
Yeah, and it like the set design was actually really good, and I actually really enjoyed the Trolloc design. I don't like the execution of their graphics.
And early on, it wasn't bad. There was a little bit of Uncanny Valley in the way they moved, but the textures were all really, really good.
Yeah,
and then it just fell apart in the final episode.
Yeah, because like the trial, like initially, I guess whenever I was reading the book, I never really understood. Like I thought Trollocs were more comical looking than I guess what they are.
Well, in the books, they mention that they are not homogenous at all. Like they're cobbled together bits of a bunch of different type of animals.
Yeah.
Where some of them have hooves, some of them have feet, some of them have beaks, some of them have snouts, some of them have horns, some of them have feathers, some of them have fur. Like it's a bunch of different stuff, and they really just kind of took one design and then copy pasted into an army.
That kind of works from a lore perspective. So one, I mean, they are abominations of science. Ultimately, that's what they're made out of. So them looking as horrifying as they did in the show, like an actor in the full outfit standing still, they look pretty good. That's a scary beast. Yeah. But the idea that they're homogenous in those scenes, whether or not that's a decision they make throughout, it does work because if I remember right in the lore,
there are different
batches.
There are different fists. Yeah, fists of Trollocs. So different units, companies, whatever you want to call them, but they call them fists.
That were all created together.
They're basically from a batch. Yeah. So it would make sense.
They're like
Uruk-hai.
Sort of Lord of the Rings.
No, they are actually very much so.
Okay, so you can go, Stephen. You can say something nice.
All right. Well so we're going to come from Joel's 5 and Andrew's 5, and it's my job to say something nice. So for my spectacle, I gave them a 4. We're off to a great start. Oh, something nice. I only have one thing left that y'all haven't covered, and it's big, bold words that says no stakes. You can't kill someone and then bring them right back to life.
No, that's plot. That is plot, sir. You get that
stuff
out of here.
All right, fine.
I have one more negative thing to say.
No, hold on.
Do you want? I can pitch it at you.
I'm tasked with something nice. Hold on.
I have another negative thing to say.
No, stop. I'm supposed to say something nice. Let me say something nice.
Rack your brains.
Spectacle. Drag him out was cool. I liked seeing that.
Drag him out was fun.
No, actually, you know what? I'll give him props. And this is adapting a book to a visual media, films, book, TV series, whatever. The representations of the male channeler's madness was well done.
Yes.
The way they did it in, I think, the first episode where they showed the Red Aja track him down and he's talking to someone who isn't there. The way they did it for Logain was good. I think that was somewhere where they used the new tools available to them to really expand and make something where it was like, and you know what? I said it earlier that there was no moment where I was like, oh yeah. That was actually a moment where I was like, okay, cool. They got that better than you could do describing it in a book. So props. I did it. There, I found something positive.
Okay, so we're just going to go back to me now, and then back to Joel.
And then back to you. And then back to me.
Look at me.
So, I'm on a horse.
Wow, that is an old meme. So one of the things that just made me laugh every single episode was that in the books, the Aes Sedai are kind of like most of the world doesn't like the Aes Sedai. Like in the books.
Well, they're at minimum, even people who welcome them into their homes
they
are
still do not trust
cautious
them.
Around them. Yeah.
So you have, in the books, like they kind of like try and blend in and they try and, not say, hey, I'm an Aes Sedai. In the show, they're just walking around like Power Rangers.
I'm so glad that you used that line. God, that was when they first go into the encampment with Logain. It's like, is everyone only wearing their? They are. You're yellow. You're red. What are you doing?
Now, I'm actually inclined to give that a big pass because
it's a large party of just them.
Part of the. I mean, I'm not even talking from a lore perspective. I'm talking about the limitations of the medium being used, in that you have to clearly depict the political affiliations that are going on with a large cast of characters that you have to blow through very, very quickly.
But that, so counterpoints. One, the book provides you that in their shawls.
They don't really wear their shawls outside of the tower.
They don't wear them a lot, but they do wear them around each other when they're being kind of politically prickly. And it also gives you an opportunity with them when they have a common goal, capture Logain, a mission that they can all work together. And then when they go back to the tower and you're like, oh, well, maybe these people are friends. And then, they come into the hall of the seat and she's blue, she's red, she's green. And none of these people actually, they will work together for that moment. but ultimately they're going to scheme against one another.
Yeah.
So I
And
think
so
you had the opportunity to do that twist.
You do, but like at the same time, how much time do
It
you
would
give
take
that and not give your viewer whiplash on, wait a minute, so like what Aja is this one now? I'm not sure what's
But they also did it with the rings too.
And this is
really hard to see on screen though.
No, it is, but it was also a one of those threads where you're messing something up further down. People stop.
So it's definitely that kind of thing where like you kind of like glaze over if there's just too many characters kind of being thrown at you all at the same time. And The Expanse does not a very good job at that for the TV show, just because they introduce a lot of characters and a lot of them all kind of sound the same sometimes, or they may look the same and that kind of stuff. And it's hard for a viewer that is uninitiated with like that's very familiar with the books or that is like really in tune with the show to keep pace with everything that's kind of happening.
Yeah.
But like stuff like color coding your characters allows you to bypass a lot of that because it just kind of ties in.
Well, and it also tells you, it almost immediately tells you their kind of personality too.
Yeah.
Red Aja, they're probably bad or they're at least mean.
Yeah.
Well, they don't like men. They're not necessarily mean. Some of them are pretty decent.
I don't know. Leandrid's pretty mean.
No, Leandrid. So we'll get into this in the next piece of this. Leandrid's great. But also to your point about color coding, so you can just tell, the book also provided this because even when they are out, they do tend to favor their own colors. And so you'll have like a gray riding dress slashed with blue. Or like they have subtle pieces where they wear a nice dress because they mostly pass off as nobility. Because, I mean, that's essentially what they end up being by becoming Aes Sedai. But they'll have pieces in there, maybe a sash, maybe something else, where they can still kind of subtly state who they are without it just being Power Rangers. I am yellow head to toe. How could Iman Valda ever know that I could be an Aes Sedai in the wild? How could she not see you from a mile away?
So let's take an opportunity to say something else nice. And that was the depiction of the Children of the Light was fantastic.
Oh,
the cold open that introduced the character of Aemon Valda, where he's just burning an Aes Sedai at the stake and having breakfast, is fantastic. So nailed it.
Well, since we're already kind of talking about characters, let's just go ahead and move to performance.
Let's go ahead and move to performance. Yeah, that's fair. So I let Joel start it. I'm not going to let him start it this time. I'll let Andrew get his first shot in.
All right. I actually gave performance a 7. I felt that
time to say something nice.
Well, no, I honestly felt that basically all the casting was pretty spot on for what they were trying to achieve. The books, it's very YA, at least at the beginning. I've only read the first book and a half, basically.
The books could very easily be lumped into YA. It's not for other reasons, but it could be.
And so they had to age everyone up because I feel that they were trying to attempt to kind of make the next Game of Thrones. That means they have to introduce a lot of adult themes. So basically everyone had to get aged up probably about 5 years to really make it kind of more acceptable, I guess, for lack of a better term. So I thought all the cast was actually really good for the characters that they were playing. Rand definitely fits the kind of I can't even remember what the name of his background is. Like his
Aiel?
Aiel?
Is that what you're trying? Is that what you're looking for? He fits the mold.
Joel's just looking at me like
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
No, like
are you talking about the ethnic group which birthed him?
Yes.
The Aiel.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's what I meant.
You started out trying to say Tuathan, didn't you? The traveling people.
No. Anyways, okay. But like he fits that. I felt that Matt fits the same kind of Tarviran. Okay.
Tarviran.
So Tarviran is another huge problem because they opened with it as a motivation for why Moraine and Lan are going to this place.
Yeah.
And they never explain what Tarviran is. And so
until the last episode, they did say something about it in the last episode.
And so when they finally do come to the point where they have to explain fully to the audience what Tarviran actually is and what Tarviran actually means, it's going to prove to be ridiculous that there were just random rumors of Fort Tarviran in the Two Rivers.
Yeah.
Well, they never show a moment happen that would be considered a Taviran moment.
Right. And
It never happens.
And it's not even something that's even like book one material, right? Like
No.
it's later books that get into the concept of Taviran. And so to introduce it here, not explain it, and use it as motivation was very, very sloppy.
Well, it is.
But that's
Okay.
this plot
No, no, no.
stuff.
Yeah,
We're
getting way off.
So Rosamund Pike was a perfect Moraine.
Yes.
Flawless casting.
I thought she was great. I thought Land's actor Daniel
Hennessy?
Henney. Daniel
Not
Henney was he fits the bill really well. The kind of
He was a little bit smaller than he's described in the book because like he's a really big imposing figure, but
Yeah.
like for his projection was
No,
really great.
He had it
he has
down.
the very stoic.
Stonewall face.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to stare at you for half a
Mhm.
day and you're not going to learn a thing about me. Yeah.
Yeah. And Egwene and Nynaeve's characters, I felt fit their kind of personalities, at least what I was expecting for them. I mean, and their performances were pretty good. This kind of goes a little bit back into spectacle, but whenever Moraine is having to do any of the Aes Sedai weaving and stuff, it didn't really do it for me. But I feel kind of bad for her. They're like, all right, you just need to just kind of wail around.
Yeah, because
Gyrate a
the
little.
books talk about hand motions, right? But this was something else.
Yeah, it was definitely
this was full
something.
body motion.
Yeah. But I thought everyone did pretty well for what, there's a little overacting here and there, but
And for what they were given.
for what they were given. And also I did not write down his name, but Loyal's casting and the way that they made him look and designed him was great. I thought he fit the bill pretty well.
I think his mannerisms were what really sold it. I am a little disappointed that they deviated. They did not give him long ears because they always talk about when humans have high emotion, because they're more sensitive to it, he reacts more to it. So when the infighting starts within the group, his ears always droop. You always get that description that his ears, like it's kind of like he wilt, and they just didn't have that little extra bit for him to emote, because he's kind of buried under either prosthesis, CGI, some combination of it, and that maybe would have helped. But I think the way his mannerisms, the way he talked and acted was spot on.
Yeah. So, Stephen.
Oh, that was supposed to me. So I, for performance, gave it an 8. Echo a lot of what Andrew said. I think all of the casting was, if not perfect, it was good enough to be. And again, Rosamund Pike was a great casting. Daniel Henney was a great casting. They both carried it, and they had to carry it because a lot of the story revolved around them.
Yes.
So they did a good job there. I really thought they did a good job with kind of I don't want to call them lesser castings, but the smaller, the more orbiting characters around the main group. So like Leandrin's casting, she was good.
Great. Yeah.
Like you don't like her, right? And then you're not supposed to like her.
And she's got that jawline, man.
Yeah. I really liked Alana, which is kind of hard because Alana in the books is not great. She kind of messes up a lot of stuff.
Who's Alana?
The green.
The green
that was going to bond the warder that ends up.
I haven't met Alana yet, I guess.
In the books,
the books,
okay, gotcha.
Yeah, she doesn't show up for later. So yeah, that was. We'll get into that with plot, but either way, Uno's casting, even though he's a really minor role here, was perfect for who he is in the books.
Tom Maryland.
Tom's casting was great. The dark one, I'm just going to call him the dark one here, even though that's.
I thought he was great.
He was great for the inner. So this reaches back into spectacle a little bit, but the dream interactions with the man with the burning face were terrible. That was terrible. That was the CGI looked awful. The way they just sort of
it was pretty bad.
And then when they finally reveal him in the flesh, so to speak, it was like, why was it not just him with like smoke rising out of his, like, this was not difficult, people. And he was great for that kind of the mind games that are being played.
He
early
fits that bill.
Oh, just the way he worked with it was great. I think he of everything going on in episode 8, he was the big savior.
He carried,
of it.
yeah.
Oh yeah, he really helped it really hurts that Matt's actor is gone because of the main 5. Not that like Rand really got much to work with. Perrin is good, but Perrin is always kind of a quiet character anyways, so it's just Matt's actor was phenomenal at that. He really had the scoundrel down. So I'm really sad to see him go. Really be interested to see who they cast, just because, or see how well that person does, because big question mark because he was probably one of my most liked, and he's gone. Like, oh,
Yeah.
Joel.
Well, I gave it a 9 on performance.
Oh,
I
we
thought,
just went right up the scale.
Yeah.
here?
9.
Yeah.
I thought that the whole cast did a phenomenal job with what they were given. I would say probably out of the main cast, the weakest performance, in my opinion, was Marcus Rutherford's Perrin, but that's probably
doesn't
mostly on the writing because they didn't give him a lot to work with. Right? They started out perhaps a little too strong with the killing the wife subplot
Trope.
and then
Fridging.
like he's just internalizing pain and reeling from that for the entire season, and so he's just like not participatory.
I think you finally get a smile out of him in episode 8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was like, and really all that is it wasn't a positive performance. It was just there.
Yeah.
But everywhere else across the board, I would not lay this composite 5.8 at all at the feet of the actors.
And I think
in
it
any
shows,
way.
right? The scores that we're throwing down here for this segment are as high as, this is spoilers, this is as high as it gets.
Yeah.
This is as glowing as we're going to get, because at the absolute worst, they were a neutral component to the story.
Mm-hmm.
At their worst moment of acting, whatever you want to pick, it was neutral at the worst. And for a lot of it, again, I gravitated to side characters, but for a lot of it, they had some really good calls on who they had out there and how they did. So
Yeah, it was good. Okay, so we're moving on to the score.
we said nice
of
things.
The score.
Time to talk about the score.
And you get to go, Steven.
Oh, joy. So I gave the score a 6. That might be a little generous. It was a little, maybe not always present. I made a point to go and listen to it separate just to.
I think we all did today.
Yeah,
just to make sure.
Well, just to see, because the opening theme. Okay, yeah, it's very Game of Thrones.
But it does have a good feel to it.
No, and it is something that will stick with you. If you don't hit skip intro on Amazon Prime,
Which we don't.
I did after. I'll watch it a couple of times, but
You are a disgrace.
it's not good. It's not good enough to not be skipped. Sorry.
But
but-
the graphics themselves are actually fantastic.
No, the weaving that they did. You know what? There was a fair bit of budget there.
Yeah.
But it was good. The music overall is kind of a little too generic fantasy.
Yeah,
and
it just kind of felt like it existed.
It's got kind of an Enya vibe to a lot of it, which can work well sometimes. But if it's not in the right place, it's not gonna work. It just
And I just only I think of when I think of Enya is just may it be.
But see, it works there.
Well, yeah, I mean, Fellowship is broken up and they're all sad and anyways.
But yeah, so it did kind of feel, I guess, maybe like they picked a little too. They tried to kind of straddle that line of Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Versus kind of going out on their own. So, and there were bits and pieces at moments, like when they go into Shadow Logoth, where you can actually pick up some of the scores, kind of building the tension or and even in episode 8, the quote unquote big battle, they had a lot. They had it was going right. They had the tensity going. Tension. Going. The tensity was there. Let me tell you, boys.
I am your tensity.
Is he like the ruler of one of the other Borderlands? Or anyways,
wow, you totally missed that.
No,
I am your density.
Oh, I don't.
Back to the Future.
Back to the Future.
Whatever. Yeah, that's going right past me. I'm sorry, guys. I can't help you with that one. Anyway, it was just there.
Yeah, it existed.
Yeah, I mean, 6. It was not awful.
It didn't offend you.
It was slightly. It had a few moments, where you were like, oh yeah, that's music. They're playing music.
I may not be a smart man, but I know what music is.
Oh yeah, and then Tom picked up the guitar, and I knocked like 3 points off the score. Anyways, Joel.
No, I'm actually going to deflect this and get Andrew to go next.
Oh, okay, Andrew.
I gave it a 5 because it existed. It didn't really offend me in any way. I liked the opening, and I listened to the whole soundtrack today in preparation for this, and
it's music.
It was music. It had notes.
So it's really bad, right? Because I listened to Arcane's soundtrack before we recorded that episode, and that one I could pick out point that, oh yeah, they played this during that, right?
Yep.
Wheel of Time, I kept having to go back to the comment or
the track titles.
Yeah, just to be like, wait, what? Where am I on minute 20 or minute 23? Which track is this? Where is this happening? Oh, okay, yeah, yeah, okay, sure. Anyways,
Joel?
So I'm going to disagree a little bit here. And I actually gave the score an 8.
I gave it an 8.
I gave it an 8.
Joel's got to rescue us.
So
He's trying to drag the score.
he remembered No Way Home. And he's like, I can't let this happen. I know how they're going to come in with 2s.
So the reason I gave it that high was not so much on the user experience end, right? So from the basic minimums of carrying the tension of a scene or the general emotion of a scene, it did its job, right? Like it fit what was going on.
You felt the tensity.
The tensity. My tensity. All right. But on the re-listening, as we have been alluding to, I also found it on Spotify and was listening to it today. And what I noticed was that there were a lot of technical pieces that went in there that you don't necessarily get from watching the show,
just because of mixing or whatever.
Yeah. But it's really, it uses a lot of female vocals in the major themes through a lot of the pieces, a majority of them, which fits in with the world building of the show because most of the power structures are very female dominated because of the way that the magic works. And so because they are taking elements of the music to attempt to tie it in with the world that they are building, it got extra points from me.
That's totally fair.
So there you go.
When I was making my scores and I was also listening to it, I did not really make, I guess, that kind of connection.
Sure.
But I also don't have a deep understanding of the lore behind Wheel of Time. I've only read book and a half, and I just watched the show.
And I'm also looking for any opportunity to give this better marks.
I know you are.
He's
dragging the chain out of the bog.
Well, you're like, well, I don't know a whole lot of the lore. I read a book and a half, and I've watched the show. Like, well, one of those kind of negates the other. So speaking of that, let's get into the plot.
Okay.
All downhill from here.
Joel gets to start.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, I gave it a 4. It hurts me.
I have a feeling that we're probably going to have roughly the same kind of plot choices here.
So I'm trying to think of it in a chronological order. And the first one that jumps out is Taviran in the Two Rivers being the reason that Moraine and Lan go there. And there's a really big reason that they had to do this. And one is because they wanted a huge subplot of, well, who is the dragon? Who is the dragon? It could be
male or female.
It could be male or female. They made that change.
Yeah.
Right off the bat. And then they wanted as many different suspects as possible for this mystery subplot, right?
Yeah.
And so they expanded, it could be man or woman, which is a fundamental change in the way the world works. And they didn't have Moraine tracking Rand from his birth origin, right? Because in the book, she knows where he was born.
There's the prophecy or the foretelling.
Don't they retcon that in episode 7 or 8?
They show that it happened, birth. But that's not why Moraine went there.
No, Moraine. So Moraine does say.
I feel that she does say at some point.
But basically, as soon as she sees him, she knows in the book.
Yeah. Well, so but
she brings the others anyway,
just in case,
in order to obfuscate what she's doing.
Well, it's
at least in the terms of the girls, she brings them because they're strong in the power, and she wants to give them to the White Tower. She wants
to turn them into the Aes Sedai.
The other boys
into Aes Sedai, make them one of her.
There's something that tips her off that they're important, and I don't remember what it is, but basically right off the bat, she knows it's Rand. She just doesn't tell you. She just doesn't tell the reader that.
Yeah, it's pretty clear throughout. Which I mean, okay, I get it. They really wanted. I don't know why they wanted there to be a mystery, because
just to create tension for viewers.
Well, okay, that's fine. You create tension for viewers, and then in episode 8, it was, oh, by the way, Rand's the dragon. Deus Ex Machina Shed. The wind told him that. That's how he knows. Like. Moraine is just like, oh yeah, the black wind of death inside the ways told you you're the dragon. We should go with that. Let's head to the Blight, boy. Let's go. No, what in the you spent so many episodes with this whole.
Steven's doing his best not to curse right now.
I know, you have no idea how hard this is. You walnuts. You spent so much time building up this who could it be, and they put a lot of effort into the concept of could it be Perrin because the dragon's known as the Kinslayer and he killed his wife,
which they also didn't set up.
They
didn't set up the whole Kinslayer
but a lot
thing.
of people outside of it, as viewers, right? They were like, "Ooh, this could be it."
But they know. But okay, so it's unfair to directly compare this to the book because it is not an adaptation.
No. That's true, but it's also like not internally consistent.
No, well, I will get to that.
Yeah, no, it's not that they didn't follow the book. They don't have. They could do whatever they want to do. They don't have to follow the book. Obviously, I mean, they did what they did, right?
Yeah.
But if you were going to spend all of this time on a will it be, won't it be, who could it be, you could have spent so much more time on something else more interesting than 6.5, 7 episodes of who could it be into, oh, by the way, it's me. I was told in the flashback last episode, let's go. Like, no, like you cannot build up to that. Like,
and another one kind of on a parallel line to that was the whole deal with Perrin's wife getting killed in the first episode, right? Like him dealing the blow to her. And this is a big trauma thing for him, which is arguably too large of a trauma thing if you're going to have an active character involved in a travel adventure.
Yeah, because that's kind of like a character killer.
Yeah,
not like characters like, oh, you killed a character. That's literally a character like the person inside of you is dead.
But then
time to go on an adventure, boys. Let's go.
But then you get to like episode 7, and they reveal, oh, he was the reason that he was having trouble with his wife, which was sort of hinted at.
A little bit. They gave something.
That they weren't like totally great was because like he had this secret love for Egwene, right?
Yeah.
Which they bring up at the end of episode 7 and resolve at the beginning of episode 8. So it was absolutely pointless.
Yeah. No, there's so much, and you know, maybe that ties back into the whole they didn't get the 2 episodes they wanted and COVID and whatever else. But at the same time, if you were going to try to dangle this out here, like 7 and 8 both happened post, and if you already knew at that point, I'm not going to get my 2, don't even put it in there. Just go ahead and just put the red mark through that. We don't need to worry about it, and no one will know.
And then you can retroactively edit it out of any previous episodes that it showed up in.
Yeah, it does, so. And it didn't really come through at all. Oh, you know what? Before we get too far into other stuff, speaking of jealousy over Egwene, another side character who I thought was really great, Aram, the guy playing Aram.
Yes.
Was
the Tinker.
Like, that was one of those where it was like, again, based on what we know from the books, not that it maybe matters, he should show up later,
right.
I hope. And I hope so, because I've really liked
he was great casting.
Yeah, like he was good, and like just his mannerisms compared to his grandparents was really great. The way he stood out, that was really well done. So anyways, back to the plot, literally. Back to the bashing. Let me pick up my notebook.
So much bashing, he can barely lift it.
It's heavy, heavy.
Well, what is your score since we're moving around to you?
Oh, that's fair. I guess I could just not draw. It's a 4. It's a 4.
Yeah,
it's just not. And the thing is, I don't want to just be like, "Whoa, the book said," no. Like it is an adaptation. You are moving from book to visual, right? TV series. And there are opportunities, and they took a couple, right? They did it with the madness.
Mm-hmm.
The way the madness was represented was really well done. There are opportunities because, I mean, let's just be frank. Jordan wrote a lot.
A lot.
There are, I don't say whole books, but there is a lot of material within books that could just disappear, and the core story is really unaffected.
Doesn't change.
Yeah.
But those core pieces, or even large chunks of the story, they're not in the beginning book.
Mm-hmm.
They're in book 8, 9, 10. Like they're way down the line. So digging in and rooting out weird changes this early, and I'm really ready for someone on the internet to sit down and go back and find. So when did Moraine actually lie? Like, season 3, and they're like, oh, well, she said this. Well, but this is what she did back in season 1, and it's a lie. And obviously you can't, because the 3 oaths, just being frank, for an internal consistency across the show, the 3 oaths are a bear to carry.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of the 3 oaths, they exiled her with the oath rod. What are you doing?
So you have a situation where she's in this trial, and there's two main problems with the trial. You've got one, she says to the Amerlin, I will obey your thing. One, she's already not allowed to lie. She is compelled to do what she said. And then they make her take a separate oath on the oath rod to compel her to do what she said. And so even ignoring the fact that is completely not how the oath rod is used in the book.
Yeah.
That is internally inconsistent.
Well, they wanted to like make it this big dramatic moment, but as soon as Moraine says, "I will do as you have ordered," she can't lie.
Yeah.
The oath rod already compelled her when she was made an Aes Sedai at this point. It tracks through, and you just poof.
And then the other problem with that one is that so these are all women that are adept at political machinations, and they all live with the three oaths. None of them can lie outright, and yet they deceive each other all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have honed radars for obfuscational language. Any little deviation of word or phrase they pick up on immediately.
Because they're all doing it
And
constantly.
what do they do for dramatic effect is that Moraine, when she's taking this redundant oath on the oath rod, she uses affectionate language towards Swan Sanche, just like laying out their entire connection for the entire room to understand.
Hey, by the way, you might worry that this could be some kind of sneaky double cross because obviously we have more going on than meets the eye.
Yeah.
Also, prior to that scene, the traveling, dream walking, I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, they built the set for the opening of that episode, and then they wanted to use it more before they burned it down.
The river hut?
Yeah. They wanted to use it more before they burned it down, so they had to use it for something else. Because like, what is going... It's not even that you traveled up to the Emerald Seat's quarters at the top of the tower, because it's blatantly not that. Unless there's some serious abuse of the power going on right now for really frivolous means, which there could be, but not with these specific characters.
Yeah, and not to give too many spoilers beyond book one, right? But there are items of the power that can do stuff similar to this, assuming that it is like a dream world kind of thing.
Right.
So they could be pulling from that, but it was not really explained or touched on here, which is okay, I think, generally speaking, because we're from the perspective that we don't understand very much about the power because most of the characters we're following don't understand much about the power.
But it was this really weird thing to put in because it was this huge leap of there's another, you could have just met in a secret hallway or what. And I actually, from my perspective, I was a little disappointed that we didn't get to see like Leanne being the keeper of the seals as kind of the almost like secretary.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't notice, Lauren picked up on it. I saw they had, Swan had the 7 stripe stole.
Yes.
Ish. But I didn't catch where Leanne had, her stole. I don't think she had
all
the
of the, so like she had her costume, like was kind of, the top hem was a little low, and like it's a shoulderless dress that she's wearing, and most of the close-ups you only see like an inch or two of fabric anyway.
Yeah,
and so it was hard to get any sort of detail off of her costume.
They hammered hard on her origins there for if you've read books and she's a Domani. It fits with her later character, even though she wasn't displaying it at that point. But whatever. I'm not trying to focus on Andrew's got stuff to say. I can see it.
See, I like how this turned into a book discussion when the book actually should have zero anything.
No,
I don't think that's true, because when you're going out to make an adaptation, on some level, you do have not a responsibility, but an expectation placed upon you to tell the same story.
So you have an expectation to tell the same story. However, you are under no obligation, one, to follow that story. And you are also under, you have to create a story that people like me or people like my wife can watch it and still understand everything that's happening.
Absolutely.
That's
so
fair.
That's why I kind of let you guys just kind of go sit there and talk for a minute and you guys can get it out of your system. That's totally fine. What you guys are doing, though, is you are directly comparing it with your knowledge that you have of 13 books of history.
15.
Whatever. It doesn't matter.
So I'm gonna stop you right there. I know you got something important to say. I'm gonna stop you right there. I'm gonna jump in. When you are making an adaptation, there is zero responsibility to be truthful to the source material. However, if you choose I have a better idea. I'm going to put it down and put it out there. It better be a better idea.
Oh, I do not disagree there.
If you walk out onto the limb and say, look at me and my great ideas, and that limb is a quarter of an inch thick and you're 300 feet up in the air, you're going to fall. And that's just kind of the reality.
Well, no, and I completely agree there. Like, if you're going to deviate from the original material in any kind of fashion, you need to be able to enhance it or create an experience for your viewers that they may not have already experienced.
Yeah.
Right. And go ahead. Sorry.
So, whenever you're kind of getting into this kind of like, oh, well, they had the sash and all that other kind of stuff, that's completely irrelevant. It does not matter.
That's true.
It does not affect the story in any way. It was one of those things where it was just like, it would be neat to see that little, it's kind of like us making a joke about the braid tugging or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a neat nod.
Oh, absolutely.
To people who are quote unquote in the know of, oh yeah. And it's a reassurance, right? Where I'm like, hey, I'm not sure how the story is going, where we're flowing, but these people, they get it still.
And whenever we talked in the Arcane podcast, it's like there's a lot of nods to Riot and League of Legends lore that they kind of hinted at, but it literally would not change anything if you knew or didn't know anything about it.
If it's not there, it doesn't necessarily alter the story unless it can come back and bite you in subtle ways.
Okay, so you guys both gave it a 4.
Andrew?
Because you guys have read the books, you have all this pre-knowledge of everything.
We have expectations.
Preconceived notions of what it should be. I gave it a 5.
So not having those was...
It helped a little.
So it helped, but it didn't help enough. And there are reasons for this. And basically the big reasons are the vast inconsistency of where characters are at any given time. So within, I think it's episode 6, maybe episode 5, where Nynaeve is in one scene in the tower. And then quite literally cut to the next scene and she is walking into another room that is across the city.
Yeah.
With no like indication that time has passed or anything. And then they cut to another scene. And then the next scene after that, she's in the tower again.
Yeah. And it's also a missed opportunity, right? To really kind of showcase the city and give us a sense. There's a big issue with just in general where it's a really big flowing land and you can tell they've traveled distances. It feels really empty.
It feels very empty. It feels very small. But the other big problem was that even just outside of characters just teleporting, land just kind of goes right past the
leaped a whole army.
Big army that's coming in, but that's totally fine. Whatever, we can ignore it.
It's not totally fine. You gave it a 5.
Well, no. Actually, the reason why I gave it a 5 is because they did it not once but twice, where they killed characters and they brought them back to life.
So cheap.
It's so.
It is a cheap emotional, just gut punch to just kill a character and be like, actually, no, they're fine.
Yeah, and like, I mean, you can have character resurrections if you do it right, and it has to cost something, and it has to take time.
Yeah, and there, from what we can tell, there is literally no consequences for, like, in the first time they kind of kill characters, they technically were not dead yet.
Just
they were grievously wounded, and Nynaeve kind of fixed it with her spirit bomb, and. but in episode 8, where literally Nynaeve is dead, and then Egwene uses the power of friendship and tears to bring her back to life from
Rapunzel?
Clearly dead. It was just so. It was
Fox,
so
the Phoenix.
Offensive.
It was very bad.
It's cheap. You know what? I want to do it. We're going to talk about Star Wars real quick.
Oh boy.
You flew the transport up so you could kill Chewie, and then the next scene, Chewie's alive. How am I? And that one is actually not as bad as this, because this, you just have the unexplained, like at least that one, there was another transport. And if you were really paying close attention, there were 2 transports that landed.
Yep.
But you had to be paying really close attention. In this, you can watch all you want, and you're still just going to be like, what is happening?
Like she clearly died, and then just out of nowhere, Egwene just
nothing about that sequence made narrative sense.
No. It didn't. It was just so offensive as a viewer because it makes, like, it's one of those things where, like, oh oh, that just happened. I
Yeah.
can't believe they just killed Nynaeve. She's the main character. She's in the second book. Like
this is the second time that she's died. She got dragged off by a Trolloc at the very start, and she's dead. Everyone just accepted she's dead.
I can kind of accept that because
I mean, if you don't see the body, nobody's dead.
No, it's
Exactly.
fair. It's fair. But emotionally, for the people, it's just like we have our friend along who just dies at different points, and then she comes back. How do we cope with this?
Maybe Nynaeve is a phoenix.
I mean, for all we know, Layla's not actually dead.
She's mad like a
come
phoenix.
back.
Like, I don't know.
That doesn't work.
But that's not how any of this works.
That's how any of this works.
But
Speaking of,
there was just there were just so many weird things that they did, just narratively speaking, on the micro, that every time I watched it, because like I was actually pretty invested up to like episode 4.
Mm-hmm.
And episode 3, I was like, oh, that was not the best battle scene, and it didn't really make that much sense, but I'll give it a pass.
I mean, it had a lot of really nice world building and showing you the interactions with the Aes Sedai and stuff.
And then the next episode, I think it had a lot more with the White Cloaks, which was really cool.
Yeah.
And or not cool, chilling.
There's the White Cloaks are probably one of the pieces that they hit the best.
Oh, just like right nail on the head.
Like this is exactly the kind of villain who they feel they are righteous.
Yeah.
In their quest or life or whatever, and those are the type of people who will do anything.
And the torture scene with Perrin and Egwene in there, like that was, I mean, it was impeccably
really well
done.
Yeah.
So like you had that, and then you go to like 2 episodes of them just treading water in Tarvalon, and you have, you know, like the weird side story with Moraine and Swan, and then just them kind of like, you know, obviously leaving Matt because he left the production, so he couldn't follow them and continue.
We didn't leave him. He left us. Are we acting right now, or are you actually mad at this guy? I'm not sure.
and you know, it just there was just problems.
Yeah.
And we've already talked about most of them, but I want to also say that it is unfair to directly compare it from the books.
Okay, all right, hold on. Also, I'm not going to compare it. This is not a direct book. This is a frame for frame episode 8. All right, you ready? Moraine and Rand go into the Blight.
Yes.
They have trekked through the Blight for some unknown amount of time, and they come upon the dead boy.
Yes.
Who has been overtaken and is blah, blah, blah. Moraine, the Blight is poison. Don't touch anything. Don't you think that's something you should tell the guy before you go into it? Y'all have been brushing past these trees left and right.
Well, and
he's leaning against the tree.
Yeah, and then they sit down and he like takes a nap.
Yeah. And it's just, oh my gosh.
There again, episode 7 and 8, where there were problems.
There were a lot of problems.
Lots of problems.
I think had the season ended at episode 6, it would have been unsatisfying, but ultimately a higher score.
I would have absolutely given it a higher score.
Yeah, absolutely. If with 7 and 8 not in there,
I probably would have given it maybe a average of 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, 6.5.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been a solid C grade.
Because I mean, I can get in here. I mean, they did Agelmar dirty.
This is
just across the
book
board.
comparison.
I know. That's
Comparison,
what I'm saying. Is
not
I can
fair.
get into there and say stuff like that, but at the same time, they took pieces from the book that happened off screen.
Yep.
All the way back to episode 1, the burning of the place, whose name I'm not allowed to pronounce.
Emmonsfield.
There we go. but that happens off screen in the book because it's almost all Rand's perspective.
Yeah.
And then you have all of the stuff with Logain. All of that roughly similar happens. The same players aren't necessarily there, but it happens, and it's all off screen.
Yeah.
It's all out of perspective, out of narration, and we just know that it happens. And so giving us bits and pieces of that isn't necessarily bad, because technically it's a deviation, right? You just kind of filled in some gaps yourself and put whatever you wanted to. And it wasn't necessarily bad. And the bit with Corinne's warder and, you know, him struggling with the grief, that was actually, you know, maybe a high point for the show. Like, this is really well done.
Really good.
This character killed himself. He's so sad. That was a great spot in the show.
That was a good point.
So
narratively,
you're right.
I know.
Narratively.
If you are coming to the table to feel things, then that made you feel
Oh,
things.
no,
made you feel
absolutely,
things,
yeah.
yes.
Like, I was like, ooh, Yeah, that was pretty rough.
Yeah. And the ritualistic public grieving scene was where Daniel Henney is just going all out on the performance. Really, really fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we've kind of just beaten the plot down into absolute nothingness here. Let's let's head towards the end of the show here. Talk about faithfulness score and our any lasting organizing thoughts.
Now we get to say stuff about the book.
See, there's always a time for it.
It's a 3. It's a 3.
I read the book, and I actually like this. The whole first season is technically the first book. I gave it a 2.
That's yeah. And you don't even have any. This is not a formative media for you.
No,
yeah,
it just they ignored so many things that could have been really interesting to watch.
And the thing is, cutting out a lot of the travel,
I'm
totally fine with that. That is a book thing, and they still handled some, like the introduction of Tom is completely different from the book.
Yeah.
It's still the key notes are hit that need to be hit.
Yeah, I wish he had more than like a quarter of an episode, but
it would have. I mean, he was good. I would have liked him on screen more, but so it goes. But it hit the right stuff for the book, and there's plenty of stuff to be cut out. But at some point, when you tell me that you have to cut scenes for time, understood. Jordan wrote a lot. And then I start watching, and I'm like, but we keep getting extra stuff that I didn't want. I thought you said you didn't have enough time.
Yeah. I think the biggest change for me that just kind of bothered me was now the ending of the first book is arguably not that good.
Right.
But it is also, it's way better than what we got.
and of all the things that, sorry, just go on.
Well, the fact that they had to find a way. Okay, so narratively speaking, they were like, if you go to the eye of the world and you're not the dragon, you're gonna die.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that is fine. You can totally whatever. So
thank God for that wind.
Moraine,
tell them who the dragon was.
Moraine and Rand leave. Okay, so now you have to figure out what to do with the rest of your cast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that is why you have this battle here, which means nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just so infuriating. Not even because I'm like, why did you change it? It was like, this makes no sense because everyone is leaving out this one pass and everything else is coming in this one pass.
And it's also interesting note, but because I have, foreknowledge of the future of the books, I actually really like what they attempted to do in changing the climax.
Okay.
They didn't execute on it very well.
Yeah.
But what they did was more clearly set up future conflicts that occur in later books. Whereas when Jordan wrote the first book, he really didn't have those in mind.
Yeah.
And so
he had
a
trilogy in mind at that point. I think it was going to be much quicker than it was.
I'm unsure.
I think
it's because he really liked Lord of the Rings.
but like that's the kind of change that I was really excited about is how can we go back and now knowing what our full scope of our attempted storytelling is, how can we make everything tie together more neatly?
Yeah.
Well, and it's one of those things because the ending of the book, first book, is rough because it's a very visual. Your perspective that you are getting is very confused because it's Rand. He doesn't know what's going on. It's a very visual thing trying to be described through words. It's really hard to get across what is going on, and even what's going on is still kind of what. So, of all the moments where you can say, "Well, we adapted this for TV," and you can just say, "Hey, the bar's pretty low. Just knock it out of the park." And no, we got World War Z Trolloc zombies crawling on a wall
with bad with bad fortresses and
poor tact. I mean, like if y'all knew that you were going to be able to draw upon some measure of the power, let's not put Nynaeve and Egwene in this, right?
Yeah,
let's
even
just say it's just the three they had. That's a weapon that should be on a defensive point called a wall, not standing in the middle of a field.
And even if for like historical reasons they're doing that. We put the army in the forward fortress. We protect the artillery pieces in the main fortress. At least put them in the main fortress.
They're just standing in the middle of them. You could have stood on the ramparts and done this. You don't have to stand in the plains.
So I'm assuming that the whole, and this is what I gather because I don't understand what they were doing besides like, okay, yeah, you can link the power and you get more powerful. I'm assuming that the reason why this is just like in-universe thought is that whenever they link, the girl that is the main controller, the node, is...
The node? the locus of power.
The node just doesn't have direct control over where the lightning bolts and stuff land. And it is more of just a massive AoE attack to where it's indiscriminate.
So I don't know what the rules of the show are. They have not explained to me what the rules of the show are. The rules of the book are blatantly not what are being used.
So, but even construed on Andrew's argument,
that was my thought process.
Right, right. But let's work with your thought process.
But it's still there.
This is a massive AoE blast that we can't control. Why is your army in front of you? You should be on the wall, and then the massive AoE blast you can't control only hits Trollocs. What if half your army is still alive and you just nuked the fortress because you can't control it?
See, the funny thing is too, I say that, and then I think about it. I'm like, you could have just been in the pass, which is a much more concentrated section of where all the Trollocs were, so then you could hit them easier.
Yeah, and then you don't give them the opportunity to spread out. Or if you were going to stand in the middle defenses, you could just be up on the ramparts and not be like, oh, we missed a few, and now I get stabbed by one of the 3 Trollocs I missed because I'm bad at this, apparently. It's just, they wanted it to be like this big, high...
Like climactic.
Yeah, like they're selling their lives out to save their land or whatever. And it was just, I mean, you can do that, but please don't just be pure stupid while doing it.
And then bring characters back to life.
And
okay.
Then,
Okay, so
Joel.
to wrap this up, I also gave this a 3 on faithfulness because
I mean,
we're just
kind of beating it up at this point. It's already on the ground and we're just kicking it.
From the first episode, from the trailers, they have already announced that they are deviating from established world building rules, and they just kept changing things from there. So like it is at the core of it, they are attempting to tell the same story, but they are leaving behind a lot of the things that made the story worth telling.
And the thing that I find actually pretty fascinating is the fact that this is the same company that has a very successful book adaptation TV series in The Expanse, where they have changed massive things about the story.
And all of those changes are under the heading of this is how you tell the same story in this medium and make it work.
Exactly.
And they executed them very well.
Yeah, and it's been great.
Do we make the argument that that's just because somehow sci-fi was really good at this when they started the series, and then Amazon just had to accept the changes?
The major...
No, there were
I don't know the moment at which
there has still been major deviations even past season 4 and beyond.
Okay, I don't know.
So whatever. I got nothing for that, but...
We don't have an Expanse spoiler wall that we have warned people about.
Yeah. So we're not going
to dig into that. Yeah. So.
Sometime in the future-ish.
All right. Well, on that note, final dig. And it's not really a dig. It's just something to float out there based on our faithfulness scores. So Brandon Sanderson, who is the second author, the guy who was tapped to finish the series, and he is some kind of advising producer. He doesn't get any kind of final say, but he's there. He's a reference. Has said that he views this as another turning of the wheel. So it is not the exact turning of the wheel that Jordan told.
Yep.
That it is a different time that they have been spun out of the wheel for this story to happen. And I think we have shown that by giving it a 3, and a 2, that we agree with that assessment. So on that note, that is all the time that we have for this episode. So until next time, I'm Stephen.
I'm Andrew.
And I'm Joel.
And every spoiler was intended. Thank you for tuning in. If you like what you heard, you can support the show for as low as $1 at patreon.com/spoilersintendedpodcast. We also have a Discord server and would love to have more people joining in the conversation. Links are in the description below. Thank you.